Welcome to episode 10 of the Wellness Connection with Fiona Kane. I am your host, Fiona Kane, and today my topic is sugar. I'm very specifically talking about the hidden added sugars as well, because I think that's actually something that is a really important topic. We really need to understand how much sugar we are consuming. Firstly, I will begin by saying it's okay to eat some sugar. I'm not here to demonize sugar and say it's the most evil thing and no one should ever have it and we all should be completely pure and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that at all. However, eating too much sugar, most things it's dose dependent. Eating too much sugar can cause health issues, and many of us eat way too much sugar. And like I said before, a lot of it's hidden in foods. So it is important to know how much is too much, how sugar affects us, and how to know if you're having too much sugar, because a lot of people, they say, oh, I don't have much sugar, I don't add any sugar to my tea, or I have 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons, whatever it is. And if you don't have much tea or whatever, that's not really an issue. But like I said, it's about the hidden sugars. So a little bit about sugar. You know, um, so when we have too much sugar, it really does affect our health, and it affects our health in many ways. It's important to even know, just for starters, that there's a cardiologist. I went to a conference and saw this cardiologist, and he actually was talking about heart disease, and he said that heart disease is a postprandial event. Postprandial basically means after food. It's what happens after you eat. And what he was referring to is after you have a meal, either what you've eaten in that meal will be nutrients and it will be nourishing you, or what you've eaten in that meal will be causing problem. And I call it anti-nutrients and or things that can maybe be harmful to you. And so essentially, if you eat a lot of sugar, after that meal, what's going to happen is several things happen. So, one, when you eat a lot of sugar, what happens is your body needs to make insulin, and it makes insulin to get that. Well, actually, I missed a step. When you eat the sugar, it ends up going into your bloodstream pretty much straight away as glucose. So straight away, you've now got glucose in your bloodstream. And then what happens is your pancreas makes insulin to remove the glucose from the bloodstream and or the excess glucose and pops that glucose into cells. So usually what it does is it stores the excess glucose in our muscle cells and in our liver as glycogen, and that's kind of stored energy. But for many of us who have way more sugar than what we need, what happens is it ends up storing it in fat cells. That's the only place it can store it, because it's sort of run out of space everywhere else. And so when we eat sugar, that's kind of the process that happens. Now, if you eat sugar occasionally, it's not a big deal. But if you're having sugar all throughout the day, then what is happening is all throughout the day, you're having to make a lot of insulin to deal with the sugar. And insulin, can cause inflammation in the body and weight gain. That's part of what it can do, not in the normal amounts and not in the right balances. But when we are making loads and loads of it all day, that does tend to lead towards inflammation in the body, and it tends to lead towards weight gain. The other thing that happens is when you are eating that way, when you're eating a lot of sugar, every time you eat that sugar meal, what happens is your blood sugar levels go up quite quickly. When they're up, you will feel, you might have the energy then, and you can function and everything's great, but then they drop, and so your blood sugar levels will drop quite quickly as well. So half an hour later, an hour later, you will crash. And when you crash, it's called hungry and angry. When you crash, or low blood sugar or hypoglycemia is another term for it, but these days people use hangry. And essentially, as it says, you might feel hungry, you feel angry, you'll probably be you're craving carbohydrates, craving sugar because your blood sugar is low. You'd be sort of tired, and you're so tired, irritable, sometimes a bit foggy, and sometimes nauseous, and you'll be craving the sugar. And so you have the sugar to make you feel better, and it does make you feel better until half an hour later when you crash. And what happens is when we eat that way, we're going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So that up, down is not good for us. And that up, down just really affects your mental health, and it kind of makes you feel wired and tired, and kind of just really overall has a really sort of fatiguing and inflammatory that's how it affects the body, right? So just fatigues you and causes inflammation. So that just whole effect on the body. And so the up and down all of the time is not good by any means for any reason. The other issue is that when we have when our blood sugar is going up down all of the time like that, what happens is we because we're pumping out that insulin all of the time, over time your body can get tired of doing that. Your body gets tired of pumping out that insulin all of the time, and over time several things can happen. So you can start to become insulin resistant, where your cells no longer recognize insulin, and longer term, you maybe will not be able to make as much insulin because your body will get tired out from your pancreas, who just can only make so much, and it kind of starts to make less. So the issue with this, of course, is those things I just described to you were insulin resistance is pre-diabetes, and then when you're not making insulin anymore, you've got diabetes there, and diabetes is kind of in between that anyway. Insulin resistance pretty much is diabetes, or it's that leading into diabetes. So obviously that kind of sugar up, sugar down thing is not beneficial at all, and can cause a lot of health problems. So the occasional sugar treat is not a major issue, but the always sugar treat or the sugar up down thing is a problem, which is why it's important you know where sugar is hidden. The other thing that's important to note is after you eat sugar, it does drop your immune system, and it drops it for several hours after eating that sugar. So if you're eating sugar all of the time, that really is going to affect your immunity. It's going to affect your ability to fight off colds and flus and things like that. So viruses and stuff. So it is important to understand that it's going to affect your immune system as well. The other thing too that so the table sugar is made from it's like glucose and fructose together, so it's a combination of the two. And what we do know is that fructose can cause a lot of the same problems, like chronic fructose exposure. I'm not saying one drink or whatever, but chronic fructose exposure does cause a lot of the same problems as chronic alcohol exposure. This is something that Dr. Robert Lustig talks about a lot in his talks and things. So the sort of things like from chronic fructose exposure would be things like high blood pressure and heart disease, and diabetes, the way I was just talking about it, explaining it before with the insulin resistance diabetes, pancreatitis, obviously weight issues, liver dysfunction, and habituation. You definitely can become quite habituated to sugar. It is also important to, sort of just mentioned liver in there. Um, in my in my experience, not just my experience, actually in the data, the biggest cause of alcoholic, sorry, not the biggest cause of fatty liver. It used to be alcoholic fatty liver disease. It used to be caused by alcohol, but the biggest cause now is sugar. It's like it's fructose. So it's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease now is huge, and there's 10-year-olds who are developing that now, right? And that's not from alcohol. That is from sugar. So that really, really high doses of fructose that we're having in our diet is a problem. I'm not saying from a piece of fruit. I'm saying from basically packaged foods and soft drinks and those kinds of things. So yes, sugar is a problem if we're having too much of it, and so we really do need to know what it's hidden in, and how much is right for us. And I would go on to say that kind of all the sugar replacements, all of the artificial sweeteners and things. Look, I understand that they might have their place if you are diabetic or something like that, and you want to sometimes have those things. I get it. That's fine. But as something that you have all of the time. There is no evidence actually to evidence is to the contrary that they help with weight in any way. And in actual fact, data's coming out over and over and over again. And there was actually new data from the World Health Organization, I think, in the last week or so, actually saying that that again, chronic exposure to artificial sweeteners, all different ones, not just aspartame, which is the one that a lot of people have heard of in Diet Coke, but a lot of the artificial sweeteners can lead to things like diabetes and heart disease and all of that kind of stuff, the things that we're trying to prevent. So they are not the solution. They might be a solution for if you have diabetes and you really want to sometimes have those things. But I really would not recommend that artificial sweeteners be something that you're consuming all of the time. And I think it's just we have to understand that nothing is free. So whether or not you're drinking a normal soft drink with sugar in it or whether you're drinking one with artificial sweeteners, they both have an effect on your body, right? And again, if you have that, sometimes it's for most people that's a non-issue, but if you're having it all of the time, accumulatively it can affect you. And a lot of things cause inflammation and health problems, even if they, oh, but it's no calories, so it can't be an issue. It's not about the calories. It's more about what that what that triggers in your system, what happens, that postprandial event I was talking about before, when that food goes into your system, what happens inside of your body, whether it's calories or not, the contents of what you ate do have an effect. Everything has some sort of effect. And the question is it a beneficial effect that's nourishing, or is it an inflammatory effect that's causing you health problems, right? So it's kind of just which do you want? And of course, most of the time you want something that's nourishing and healing, and occasionally you have something because you want it because it's fun. That is fine. It just shouldn't be like something you're doing all the time, every day. But when we are consuming all these products that contain sugar, and you know how I said that your pancreas makes the insulin, and the insulin takes the glucose, the excess glucose. You need some glucose in your system, but it takes excess glucose out, deposits it in cells and things, and it deposits it in the liver for storage. But there's only so much you need there, and this is where the whole kind of fatty liver starts to develop, because you end up, it makes fat cells, and those fat cells just sort of sit around your liver, and not just your liver, your organs. So we end up kind of basically with fat around all of our organs, the pancreas, the liver, whatever. It really affects the function of those organs and your overall health. And that leads in towards the high cholesterol and the wrong kind of high cholesterol. So cholesterol in of itself is not necessarily an issue, whole separate talk. However, the wrong kind of cholesterol, which is certain kinds of LDLs, which is like they're called small dense LDLs. They are a problem, and they are a byproduct of the sugar in your diet. So it's kind of the sugar and the insulin resistance and the fatty liver and then the high cholesterol. All those things are connected. So uh, when we eat a lot of sugar like that, that's when we're going to end up with the fatty liver and the insulin resistance. And so when you are diagnosed with fatty liver or insulin resistance, you don't sort of say, "Oh wow, I've got fatty liver, I should stop eating eggs." Eggs have nothing to do with your fatty liver. Eggs are super healthy, but you need to back off on the sugar in your diet, and kind of know where that's coming from. So, and I'm not going to, today, I'm not going to focus on all carbohydrates. I'm focusing kind of, at this point anyway, focusing just more on sugar itself. I want to tell you about some of the sort of sneaky places that sugar can be where we don't realize it, because obviously we know it's in a soft drink. We're not, we kind of know that's where sugar is. Um, and actually, something worth, before I go there, just something worth pointing out. So, some of you may know that I'm a That Sugar film ambassador and That Sugar movement ambassador. So, I've worked with Damon's team to spread the word about issues around sugar, and That Sugar film is still a great film, and I think you can usually find it on places like SBS and that kind of thing, or you can buy it. I think it's on probably a lot of the streaming services. Very good film and worth seeing. And even though it's 6 years old or something now, it's still very valid. Everything in there that they're teaching is pretty much very close to accurate for today. But in that film, to give you an idea of the power of this, in that film, what Damon did is he did an experiment where he sort of was healthy in the beginning, blood tests, everything fine, great, normal weight, normal health. And then he had this experiment when he was going to have 40 teaspoons of sugar per day for 60 days. Now, 40 might sound like a lot, but when I start talking about some of these foods, you'll get that it's not as much as you might think it is. And at the time, it was kind of the average amount of sugar that Australians were having in their diet. Sort of an average, an overall average. So, anyway, but what he chose to do was not to have it from junk food. So he wasn't having kind of ice cream and soft drink. He was doing it with hidden sugars. So the foods that you think are healthy, but they're full of sugar. And so the point of the experiment was not to say Coca-Cola has sugar. Like, of course it does. You know that. You choose to have Coke, you don't. Up to you, right? When you choose it, you know that you're having sugar, and that's your choice, right? But it's the foods that you choose that you think that you are choosing as a health product, and they're being sold to you as a health product, but they're full of sugar. There's the problem, because that's the hidden sugars. That's when you're trying to do the right thing and you're not, and you don't realize it. So essentially, what happened in his experiment is by day 18, he had fatty liver. Day 18. And he had this really unstable mood. He was kind of manic and wired and tired and that sort of thing. And he's got that kind of personality, one of those people with a lot of energy and a lot of drive. And, a lot of those kinds of people, even the people who may be like prone to like that ADD, but that really kind of just really energetic people who have thinking about a lot, doing a lot, very active. They're the sort of people when they do this kind of thing, especially they just get this manic and wired and tired thing, right? So that way of eating doesn't support them at all. So in this time, like I said, day 18, he developed fatty liver disease. He went up by 8.5 kilograms and 7% of fat. That's huge, and a 10 centimeter increase around his waist. So that just all happened in just like 2 or 3 weeks, right? That is incredible. And that leads to insulin resistance and diabetes and all the health problems. So whenever they do these studies where they kind of test this stuff, I think Dr. Michael Mosley did something similar. I can't remember the exact numbers around his, but he did something quite similar. And within a couple of weeks, those people start going into fatty liver and insulin resistance, right? So it shows you how quickly you can go into it. But in both cases, I know with Damon and then also with Michael Mosley, when they turned it around, they got out of it very quickly as well, which is great. And the less damage you've done to your body, the quicker you're going to get out of it, obviously. But, it shows you the power of nutrition, that you can go into it quite quickly, but you can go out of it quite quickly, depending on how much damage you've done. But, power of nutrition is when you nourish your body, it responds. And when you punish your body, it responds. Okay. So, so it was worth mentioning that, because I just think that just shows you the absolute power of nutrition. So I'm going to give you an example of how much sugar is in things. But before I do that, I'll just give you an example of how you know what to look for if you're reading a food label. So when you read a food label, I don't know about overseas, but I know how it works in Australia. In Australia, you have a look on the side at the ingredients list. There's two things. There's the ingredients list and the nutrition panel. So the nutrition panel will tell you how much sugar is in something. So it will say something like there's 20 grams of sugar in a product. Essentially, a teaspoon is 4 grams. It's like 4.2, but let's just say 4 grams because it makes it easier. So what that means is if there is 20 grams of sugar, it means there's 5 teaspoons of sugar in that product. The World Health Organization actually recommend for good health that we don't have more than 6 teaspoons of sugar a day, or maybe maximum 12, but somewhere between that 6 to 12, but they're recommending about 6, right? So if you pick up something like a yogurt and it's got 20 grams of sugar in that, well, that is almost all of your sugar for the day, right? So that gives you an idea that just one product can be all of your sugar for the day, if you're not careful about what you're eating. So essentially, you just divide however much sugar it says it has in grams, you just divide that by 4, and that's how many teaspoons it has. And you want to stay around 6, no more than 12 teaspoons a day, depending on your health, depending on how it works for you. Everyone's health is different, and it depends on your overall diet, what it looks like as well. So, anyway, to give you an example, and I don't know if these numbers are exact anymore, but I think they would be pretty close. A fruit juice, and I'm not talking about a piece of fruit, but a fruit juice. Like there's an orange juice that has about 13 teaspoons of sugar in a bottle of orange juice. Like this is like a small, like a person Like it's not a big one that you put in the fridge and share with the family for a week. This is like a serving, right? Well, it's the same as a cherry ripe, which is about 12, 12 teaspoons, 12 to 13 teaspoons. Something like a yogurt, like Ski Delight. At the time I was looking at this was a few years ago, might have changed slightly, I don't know. But at the time, it had 6.8 teaspoons of sugar in it. 6.8 teaspoons. That's a lot when the recommendation is no more than six. A Kit Kat had 5.7 at the time. So, now, they might be different in other ways. Of course, the yogurt hopefully had some protein in it, and the yogurt had um, some things that are good for your fermented stuff that's good for your microbiome and all that kind of stuff. So there's other ingredients as well, but from a sugar perspective, they were the same. In fact, the Kit Kat was better. So some of these products that are being marketed as health products are not health products. Another example at the time, it was those like Frugos, which are kind of like fruit lolly type things. They had 6.2 teaspoons of sugar, whereas the Mars bar had 7.7 at the time. A Ribena, 6.4 teaspoons of sugar, and I think it was a small, like a 250 mil Coke at the time, it was 6.6 teaspoons. So the Ribena and the Coke, same thing, right? They're both sugar. You go and eat the fruit, that's fine. But eating, and there's limits and all the rest of it. But generally speaking, go and eat the fruit, not an issue, the whole fruit. But just the sugar of the fruit in a carton, that's a whole different story. Something like Up and Go. At the time, one of the Up and Goes had about 4.7 teaspoons of sugar in it. And iced chocolate had the same, or very similar. They were both 4 point something. Uh, but then the other places, the sneaky places, are things like sauces. So barbecue sauce is roughly about 50% sugar. As simple as that. It's about 50% sugar. So like 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce has 2 teaspoons of sugar in it. About 50% sugar. Uh, uh, what are they called? Tomato sauces tend to be about 40% sugar. They're also something like a lean cuisine meal. There was a lean cuisine meal that had 5.1 teaspoons. A couple of Krispy Kremes, or was it? Yeah, had 5.7 teaspoons. Again, there might be other nutrients there as well to think about. It's not only about the sugar, but still, that's a lot of sugar. And the difference is the Krispy Kremes aren't being marketed as healthy, whereas the lean cuisine is, right? So again, Nutrigrain and Cocoa Pops. Well, in this at this point in time, Nutrigrain had slightly more sugar in it than Cocoa Pops. They're both much the same, and they're both junk food. But generally, people kind of know that Cocoa Pops is junk food, but Nutrigrain is sold as Iron Man food. It's sugar. It's just a box of sugar. So then other things like there's a protein drink, and you can compare that to a Twix bar at the same at the time, and it was the same amount of sugar. Things like when you if you got like a pasta sauce, like you could get you could either just cut up some tomatoes or get a can or a jar of passata, or just like cut up tomatoes, whatever, just tomatoes, that's fine. But when they start to sell them as like a tomato sauce, like a pasta sauce, and it's like a tomato based pasta sauce, they add sugar to it. So there was one here that I think a cup of sauce had 4 teaspoons of sugar in it. You don't actually need that, or you can add your own for taste if you want to, a little bit, but you certainly don't need that much. Sesame snaps had the same amount of sugar as two Tim Tams, and it's like Sesame Snaps advertised as healthy, and Tim Tams are like, they're sweet. So this isn't about favoring one brand of anything. It's just saying that we know when we're having the cola or we're having the chocolate bar, we know there's sugar in that, and we're accepting that and we're choosing that. But when you're getting like the sesame thing or the protein thing or the light and easy or the like whatever the brand, but just when you're getting things that are marketed to you as healthy or diet food or nutritious food, and they're not, that's the issue, right? So it's not just about it's not it's about the food as a whole, but it's also just understanding that, you're getting kind of lied to quite a lot because the marketing kind of says healthy and natural. Well, sugar is natural. It's made from sugar cane, so it is natural. Um, The other thing is things like mayonnaise. So, and actually, the difference between low fat versus full fat at the time, low fat versus full fat, the low fat one had 28 teaspoons of sugar in it, and the full fat one had 9. That's because when you take fat out of a product, it tastes awful because fat is what gives it flavor. They usually use sugar or something like that to give you the flavor. And fat in its natural form in a natural product is not bad for you anyway. So the fat that's naturally in mayonnaise is a non-issue. It's actually good for you, and so you're better off to have the full fat mayonnaise without much sugar in it than have get the low fat and it's got 28 teaspoons of sugar in it, right? So a lot of products we're kind of being tricked, So it's kind of the yogurts and the sauces and the mayonnaise and things like that. So it's just really really important to understand that they are selling things as all natural and healthy and whatever, and there's lots of things, like I said, sugar is all natural, but it doesn't mean you eat a whole ton of it, right? So, anyway, to summarize, I just want to say that it's okay to have some sugar. Enjoy your sugar. It's fun to have sugar in some foods, and I enjoy it just as much as the next person. Just understand the places that it's hidden, and just understand that it does have an effect on your health. So, you have to consider how much is right for you. The World Health Organization recommends no more than 6 teaspoons a day for health, 6 to 12, but they're sort of saying 6 is better. And understand that when you're looking at a product and it tells you how much sugar is in there, that 4 grams is about a teaspoon. So if it says it's got 20 grams of sugar, that's 5 teaspoons. And that's pretty much getting up to as much sugar as you need in a day anyway. And don't get tricked into like children's products that have a lot of fruit products. Give your children fruit, right? Not the fruit product, because the fruit product is just the sugar from the fruit. You want to have the fruit that's got the fiber and it's got other nutrients in there, not just the concentrated fruit or it's concentrated sugar of a bunch of fruit, right? They're two very different things, right? So, okay to have some sugar, be aware of how much you're having, be aware of all the secret places you're having it. And I generally recommend with people that you just start slowly. So, what you might do is the first thing you do is look at which mayonnaise you're getting, compare how much sugar's in them, and get the better one. And now that you do that, you're in the habit of getting that different mayonnaise. Great, right? And in a couple of weeks' time, next time you run out of another sauce, you might get a different one. And just slowly, as it goes, compare the products and start getting better products with less sugar in them. And over time you'll find that you're having a lot less sugar, because people will have things like the breakfast cereal that's full of sugar, and then they'll have with yogurt that's full of sugar, and a juice that's full of sugar. And I think Damon, one of his first meals, it was like 20 teaspoons of sugar or something for breakfast, and that was healthy. It wasn't Cocoa Pops, it was like Special K and yogurt and juice of some sort. So just be aware that it sounds healthy and it's often sold as healthy, but lots of sugar is really problematic for your health. Little bit is fine, and you just sort of work out that it depends on you as what works for your body. Enjoy it, but know where it's hidden and make conscious choices about where you have it and where you don't have it. And slowly go through your pantry and just kind of change over the products you're using so you're using better quality products. And fat is not bad for you, just natural fat and product is better than the fat free variety that's full of sugar, because fat makes it taste good. Anyway, I will leave it there. Enjoy your sugar, but just understand it is about moderation, what that looks like for you, and knowing where it's coming from. And don't be fooled by marketing that tries to encourage you to eat lots of sugary products, but it's good for you because it's got a picture of a farm on the front or something like that. Anyway, hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.